All right, so let's take a look at the deck tech for this one ticket commander Nekusar deck. It's a little bit difficult to find a commander that really does what you want it to do in one ticket commander because, of course, the cost of that commander, at least under the rules that Corey and I are using, the cost of that commander has to go into that one ticket, which comes out to more or less $1 in real world money, $1.05 after tax if you're buying an event ticket that you trade to something like a card hoarder. In this case, like I said, I've got Nekusar. Nekusar's ability really enables this deck, which is a discard-themed deck. So you see here, Nekusar costs 5 mana. He's Grixis. He's a 2/4 zombie wizard. In the beginning of each player's end step, that player draws an additional card. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Nekusar the Mindrazer deals 1 damage to that player. So you can see one of the disadvantages if your deck is built around discarding is eventually your opponent runs out of cards. They get into a situation where their hand is empty, they're drawing a card every turn, and then they're playing that card because they know they're going to discard it. Maybe you'll get a couple here or there because maybe they don't have the mana to play it, but most of the time they're going to try and get rid of that card as soon as possible. Nekusar, again, just sort of helps keep that going. We play a few other things that punish the opponent for having no cards in hand. For example, Wheel of Torture, 3 mana artifact here. During each of your opponent's upkeeps, Wheel of Torture deals 1 damage to that player for each card in his or her hand fewer than 3. So if they have no cards in hand, they're taking 3 damage every turn. This, by the way, is, I believe, one of the most expensive cards in the deck here at 4 cents. A whopping 4 cents, which actually ends up being a lot when you realize you have to have 100 cards. You take out the basic lands, those don't count towards the cost. We're counting them as 0. So you're basically looking at, 60 plus cards that you need to fit into the deck for under 1 ticket. You'll see here that the price online is currently at 1.08 tickets. We mentioned in the video that's going to change because it's really difficult to find a stable price when you're talking about so many cards at just a penny or 2 a piece. It's going to change over time. So we're looking at how we want to approach that. There's a couple different ways you can, but I think in this range is pretty fair. It was 1 ticket on checkout. Other cards we have in here to sort of punish our opponents. We have Geth's Grimoire. Whenever an opponent discards a card from his or her hand, you may draw a card. We do have a number of things in the deck that make both players or all players discard a card. So we want to keep that opponent, we want to keep that at card advantage, even if we're getting rid of our own cards. Of course, we have some classic enchantments here, like, let's see, Liliana's Caress. Whenever an opponent discards a card, that player loses 2 life. And then we also have sort of a classic from when I was a kid, Megrim. Whenever an opponent discards a card, Megrim deals 2 damage to that player. So almost exactly the same as Liliana's Caress. A little bit difference. One is damage, one is loss of life. Liliana's Caress, of course, costs a little bit less mana there. So we're hoping to get those out. We also have Quest for the Neilstone. Whenever an opponent discards a card, you may put a quest counter on Quest for the Neilstone. And at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand and Quest for the Neilstone has 2 or more quest counters on it, you may have that player lose 5 life. So that's pretty big if we can get our opponent's hand empty and they're not able to keep cards around. They're not going to be around for very long if we're dealing 5 damage a turn, more or less. Shrieking Affliction, similar effect here. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 1 or fewer cards in hand, he or she loses 3 life. So we're really trying to keep the cards, keep the cards out of their hands so they can't cast anything. Keep them discarding cards, and sort of go from there. We have some other just good cards for Grixis. We have Cruel Ultimatum. As you can see here, 2 tickets for a pretty powerful effect. Of course, it is Grixis mana with an extra black in there, 2 of each and 3 black. Target opponent sacrifices a creature, discards 3 cards, and then loses 5 life. You return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand, draw 3 cards, then gain 5 life. This card's going to be pretty difficult to cast, if we're being honest, because if you look at our lands, we have 1 non-basic land, that's Evolving Wilds. You really have to splurge a lot if you want to get non-basic lands in the deck, because if you can run all basics, you're giving yourself more fractions of a ticket that you can throw towards the rest of the cards in your deck. So if I wanted to have more non-basics, I would have to cut some more stuff in here, potentially play more more sort of play fewer of the cards that I really want to play, and more cards that are just sort of single ticket filler. Our only mana fixing really is Evolving Wilds and the Burnished Heart, which is kind of a splurge at 3 or 0.03 tickets right now. Let's see if there's some other highlights. Since there is stuff that causes both players to discard a card, I've got Drakehaven. We do need a way to win the game if we aren't able to get there with the damage. So having some flyers with Drakehaven is helpful as well. What else do we have in here? Nicol Bolas, that's an alternate win condition there. Nicol Bolas is just a 7/7 flyer. This is, the OG Elder Dragon Highlander, or Elder Dragon, I should say, where EDH got its name from, if for some reason you're still not familiar with that. At the beginning of your upkeep, you sacrifice it unless you pay one of each of the Grixis mana, and whenever it deals damage to an opponent, that player discards a card from, or discards his or her hand. So, we're getting there one way or the other. You can imagine how deadly this can be if your opponent somehow refills their hand by drawing cards or something like that, and you're able to get a Nicol Bolas on the ground and attack. We also have Lavaborn Muse here, another Punisher for if they don't have cards in hand. We have Archfiend of Ifnir, another card that helps us out when we're discarding cards, because we can sort of slowly kill all of the opponent's creatures by putting -1/-1 counters on there. And then we have a few ways to take creatures back from graveyards, since we are hopefully going to be causing our opponent to discard a ton of them. We've got Puppeteer Clique, 3/2 flyer with Persist, and when it enters the battlefield, you get a creature card from your opponent's graveyard, put it onto the battlefield under your control. It gains haste, and at the end of turn, you exile it. So this will get rid of some of those creatures for good if they happen to have any kind of graveyard recursion. And of course, it lets you beat face with whatever stuff they have, whatever they've discarded. We also have, a couple enchantments that work like that. We have Animate Dead, which gets a creature from a graveyard and brings it back. And a few things like that in the deck. Our spells here, we also have Reanimate, of course, the classic Reanimate. You get to put a creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, and you lose life equal to its converted mana cost. Surprisingly, only 0.02 tickets there for Reanimate. The rest of it, we have, just sort of some stripping cards from the hand or filling our hand up. We've got Dream Salvage. For 1 mana as an instant, you can draw cards equal to the number of cards target opponent discarded this turn. Again, this specific format that we're playing here, we are doing as a sort of as just a 1v1, but using the standard commander rules. So initially when I threw Dream Salvage in the deck, I had Mind Twist, but that just ended up being way too expensive. I would have had to cut almost all of the other cards in the deck, or at least 10 cards in the deck that cost 2 cents or more. I'd have to replace them with 1 cent cards, because the cheapest Mind Twist was 0.22 tickets. So instead we have Mind Shatter, not quite as good, but it's going to get rid of the opponent's hand, hopefully strip them out there. Council of the Sorotami, we have just some generic card draw cards here. Frantic Search, of course, draw some cards and discard cards, untap 3 lands. So you can imagine if we happen to get Drakehaven out there, we could for 3 mana, and then we discard those cards, we trigger the Drakehaven. We've got the untapped lands again that we can then use to get 2 Drakes from. Heartless Pillage, this is a newer card. I don't think it's great in pretty much any other format, but especially since we have such a little fixing that we can afford in a deck like this, with only being 1 ticket, Heartless Pillage is a better mind rot, because it's going to get us a treasure if we've attacked with a creature. Then we have some just generic removal. Perplex. This card it's going to counter a spell. Your opponent's not going to want to discard their hand, but it could eventually be transmuted for some other 3 mana spell if we really need something, like maybe we need to get that Megrim out or something like that. And then Diabolic Tutor. You can't be really affording too many tutors with a single ticket here, but Diabolic Tutor certainly gets there. So yeah, that's a basic overview. You can see the full list here. I'm also going to have the full list up on thediscard.com, and I'll provide links to the list both here on MTG Goldfish, where we've been looking at it, as well as on Tapped Out. You can find that all on thediscard.com, as well as Corey's list. Corey is recording his side for cardknocklife.com. You'll be able to find all of that there and on our website as well. So check it out. And thanks for watching.